Tom has always been one of those guys that could fix anything. You'd go in the shop and you'd have a complete transmission completely disassembled, or a rear end, the shocks are completely disassembled, and he can put them back. Remember how they go back together, and that'll typically always be better. No, he was one of those guys that Cal had hired, and very, very loyal to Cal, very disciplined as far as, but it takes a lot of, discipline to work the hours a lot of these guys have to work and keep the equipment going. I think that so many times that he always had his head down in his business. I mean, he was always real, focused on what he was doing. So he wasn't one of the real talkative guys that you'd take off and spend a lot of time talking to, because he seemed to always be busy. That's what I remember working with him more than anything. And his talent. I mean, he definitely had talent. He'd say something to me that I'd really have to pay attention to, because he might come over and say, "Hey, Ivan, when you shift the gearbox, be kind of careful with third gear. You're starting to rake the gears a little bit and we might break a gear." But always had to pay attention to what he had to say.
It's impossible to describe Tommy, because he's a combination of passion, integrity, commitment, and a jokester of sorts. So you never really know what Tommy you're going to get. But the nice thing about working with Tom, and has been for 40 years or whatever it's been, is being able to embrace his personality and use a level of humor that is so critical when you're pouring yourself into what we do, the passion towards competition.
Tommy has a disarming personality, and he is very intense. He is very passionate in the heat of battle, but throughout it, he maintains also a sense of humor. And he would always be in there, a little, ball busting, if you will. And again, that kind of character, that effect in challenging situations can actually be quite helpful, because it reminds everybody that, hey, let's not get too full of ourselves. We're out here racing, we're having a good time. And so that, again, always stuck with me.
Well, we actually met before the Toyota program. When we started, he was racing a Class 8 pickup truck for Pacific Clark Aiken with Steve Kelly. And that's when we first met. It was just kind of palling around, in addition to being on the tech committee under a guy named Harold Day. This is 100 million years ago. And that's where we first met. It progressed into PPI building a truck, or at least the fabrication part of Tommy's next generation pickup truck. It was through that time that the Toyota opportunity evolved, and that's where Tommy and I partnered up to do it together.
One of the first programs I was thrown into was to provide support to PPI, Precision Preparation Incorporated, right here in Southern California. And I was attached to this team as an engine engineer, along with a technician mechanic from TRD. And that was my first interface with this young, driven, expressive, passionate kid by the name of Tom Morris. But he was the guy that kind of pulled it all together.
The biggest thing that I would remember, not any particular story, I'm sure there's thousands of them I just can't remember, but was that undying commitment to ensure that whatever we were working on, we could get across the finish line first. Tom and I both were really committed to the desert, because it just, the variances in competing in the desert are so much greater. Tom drove one truck, Ivan drove the other, then Tom split it with Frank Arciero for a while. And it became obvious that we, as a company, PPI didn't have the resources, the financial resources of the people to compete with two trucks, and Tom gave up his seat so we could focus on Ivan. And I remember a time we went out to the Mint, and Tom had come up with this little check valve that we hadn't run before, and we were literally, the race was going to start whether we were ready or not the day before. And Tommy's all over the thing. I mean, he's through every orifice of the truck, and we're trying to figure out what the hell to do. And Ivan finally came in and said, I think we've got it. To be honest, I didn't believe him. Now, I'm not sure Tommy did either, because he was just worn out. So the next day, I couldn't get off the ground. The wind was crazy and I would fly in the air. And I remember when we finally got up, I was calling because we were way back. The Class 2 cars had started in front of us because they had a better average time. And I remember when I got up, I talked to Tom. And I said, where the hell are we? And because I figured, well, by now we're probably broken again. And he said, well, we're 7th across the road. And I said, well, we're still running anyway. So where are the Class 2 cars? No, we're 7th. Overall. I was like, what? Meaning 7th car on the road. I couldn't believe it. That was a defining moment. The amount of work that Tom put into getting that truck to the point. You can tell I'm still emotional about it. We won that race by 45 minutes. We'd found our groove. And that was it. I mean, the rest was history. We went down to the Baja 500 and won that, and then just kept going and going and going.
Tommy Morris is the Vince Lombardi of off-road racing. He took this PPI team of Cal Wells and Ivan Stewart and made them into the team that everybody had to show up and beat in order to get a spot on the podium.
It was neat because Tom had built a series of relationships with the folks in product planning at Toyota. He built these relationships to have them come out and help us support the car. And their involvement caught their eye as far as how can we market these things beyond just, hey, you know, we won on Sunday, let's sell on Monday. But to create an entire ecosystem around what it was like to be the tough and reliable Toyota trucks. And that's when you started seeing the TRD Pros and all that kind of stuff, which Tommy then separately were helping Toyota develop off the track, nothing to do with racing, and created the basis for what they are, and still to this day, what the next Toyota generation truck is going to look like, from the new Tacoma, which Tommy did the driving on, to what the next Tundra's going to look like, and then suspension development. It all still funnels through Tom. So, you know, we're literally talking about millions of trucks that are on the road today that he's had a hand in developing.